The hearing was supposed to be routine until Congressman Dan Goldman stepped in and tore straight through Kristi Noem's talking points like they were paper. What followed wasn't just a clash, it was a total unraveling. The moment Goldman demanded she stop dodging and start respecting the Constitution, everything exploded. And trust me, you're going to want to see this.
I now recognize Mr. Goldman for 5 minutes questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to go back to Mr. Kilmar Abrego Garcia's case, Madam Secretary. But my first question for you is a pretty simple one. It's basic civics. Which branch of government does the Constitution give the authority to interpret what the law is, the judiciary or the executive branch?
Sir, going forward, the interpretation of the law, you make the laws in this body. The judicial branch makes sure that they have integrity and they're applied properly to individuals.
So I'm just going to take that as the judiciary branch. Now, let's focus for a second on what the judiciary branch has said about this case. We know the Supreme Court has said 9-0 that notwithstanding your statements under oath here today that Mr. Kilmar Abrego Garcia was afforded due process, he was in fact not afforded due process, because then if he were, you would have seen the withholding order that did not permit him to be deported to El Salvador. Now you allege, and I guess the Attorney General alleges, that he's a member of MS-13. That may very well be the case. And if he is, now that is a foreign terrorist organization, certainly the immigration laws would allow him, and in fact require him, to be deported. I certainly would support that. But the problem that we have here is what you allege, what Ms. Green alleges, what the Attorney General alleges, is not the judiciary. You don't get to decide whether or not he is an MS-13 member. And you don't have to take my word for it, because Judge Wilkinson, a Fourth Circuit judge, very conservative, addressed this argument. He said, the government asserts that Abrego Garcia is a terrorist and a member of MS-13. Perhaps, but perhaps not. Regardless, he is still entitled to due process. If the government is confident in its position, it should be assured that position will prevail in proceedings to terminate the withholding of removal order. Will you commit right now to give Mr. Abrego Garcia that process where you can prove your allegation that he is a member of MS-13?
Congressman, that judge that you just quoted did not say he was not a member of MS-13. Who did say that he was a member of MS-13 was law enforcement officers that encountered this indiviwall.
Yeah, he knows that. This is a Fourth Circuit judge. He knows all of what the evidence is, and he's saying if that evidence... So you're not going to commit to follow this order? You won't commit to follow this court order?
By the way, he
Madam Secretary, I reclaim my time. Stop filibustering. Stop filibustering.
By gang members of MS-13.
Will you give Mr. Abrego Garcia the due process that the Supreme Court and Judge Wilkinson has required you to give him?
Abrego Garcia is an El Salvador resident who is in his home country. If he were to come back to this country, he would be immediately removed again.
How do you know?
He has received and been treated appropriately, sir, and he is not...
How can you say he's been treated appropriately if the Supreme Court has ruled 9-0 that he hasn't been treated appropriately? Why is your opinion better and have more authority than the Supreme Court?
Investigators, 2 judges, an immigration court that all said he was MS-13 and was removed from this country.
But you understand, that is you saying that. That is you saying that.
That is them saying that. This
no.
investigators and law
that is
enforcement
you
officers
making that determination.
Against him. If you don't trust
the court has considered all that. The judge has considered all that, Madam Secretary. And if you would be quiet, because I'm reclaiming my time, you are not following this court order. But let's focus on the court order, because this opinion also says that to facilitate, which the Supreme Court is requiring, is an active verb. It requires that steps be taken. What steps have you taken to return Mr. Abrego Garcia to allow him to get due process?
Abrego Garcia is in his home country.
What steps have you taken?
If your continued advocacy for him were to...
I'm not advocating for him. I'm advocating for a court order, Madam Secretary. The court order says that you must take steps to follow the court order. You are here under oath. What steps have you taken to return Mr. Abrego Garcia pursuant to this court order?
got to be extremely discouraging to be one of your constituents. To see you fight for a terrorist like this and not fight for them is extremely alarming to me.
I'm fighting for due process, and that's under the Constitution.
Gentleman's
You
time
should
has
fight too for due
expired.
process.
The gentleman's time has expired. I now recognize.
What we just witnessed was a masterclass in how Democrats hold the line when the GOP tries to muscle past the Constitution. Dan Goldman didn't just question Kristi Noem, he dismantled her, piece by piece. And he did it by sticking to something Republicans always claim to love, but never want applied to themselves or their political allies, the actual rule of law. Goldman opened with basic civics, and honestly, he had to, because Noem sat there acting like the executive branch gets to play judge, jury, and Constitution all at once. He reminded her, and the entire country, that the judiciary interprets the law, not whatever a Republican governor decides she wants to believe that day. Then came the hammer. The Supreme Court, in a 9-0 decision, yes, even the conservatives, ruled that Kilmar Abrego Garcia was denied due process. Denied it. Noem tried to smirk her way through that fact, but Goldman hit her with the receipts. If the government wants to claim someone as MS-13, then the government has to prove it in court. That's how American justice works. You don't get to skip the constitutional steps just because someone has a scary label attached to them. But that's where Noem completely fell apart. Instead of answering Goldman's question, will she follow the court order and give Garcia the due process required by law, she dodged, deflected, blamed law enforcement, talked in circles, and ultimately exposed that she has zero respect for the separation of powers. And when Goldman confronted her with the most basic truth, that the Supreme Court has more authority than Kristi Noem, she melted down. The way she tried to talk over him, only for Goldman to shut it down with, "If you would be quiet," that was the moment the facade cracked. She wasn't defending safety, she wasn't defending law enforcement, she wasn't defending the Constitution. She was defending her own narrative, even if it meant ignoring a unanimous ruling from the highest court in the country. Goldman made it clear, Democrats don't just talk about due process, we uphold it, even when it's inconvenient. Republicans, on the other hand, will abandon the Constitution the second it stops serving their political story. This exchange exposed exactly why the GOP keeps losing credibility in hearings like these. They want to rule by accusation, not evidence, by politics, not law. But as long as Democrats like Dan Goldman keep stepping in, calling out the lies, and reminding America what the Constitution actually says, Republicans won't be able to hide behind their slogans anymore. This wasn't just a clash, it was a constitutional reality check, and Kristi Noem failed it in real time.